Okay, so one of the interesting things that's actually coming out of the psychology literature is this notion of embodied cognition. Now, people used to think of cognition as being a kind of input into your brain, a kind of processing in your brain, followed by some kind of output. Now, this is called the mentalist understanding of cognition, and it's being challenged it's basically being sort of thrown out in favor of this new way of understanding cognition, which is embodied cognition. And this means we actually think with our bodies, that actually by engaging with the world and interacting with it, it's part of the thinking process. Now, a very simple illustration of this is when a child counts with their fingers. Now, this isn't a simple case of input, processing, output, but actually using the fingers is actually part of the overall cognitive process. Now, the trouble is with a lot of management techniques we use now, where we sit and we use PowerPoint slides, is we're not interacting with anything. We're kind of like assuming we can input information and process it in our brains and then just give an output. And actually what we're doing is we're missing out on a lot of that learning that comes through experimenting and touching and feeling the world, moving things around. So what we try to do in the startup jungle is incorporate that interactivity. We want people to play with the animals. We want them to move them around and create scenarios. See what would happen if I move certain actors from one place to another. Notice areas where there are gaps that they wouldn't have noticed if they were just thinking about it, but they can actually see it in front of them through interaction. So that's one aspect of embodied cognition. Another aspect is linking back to this idea of framing, is that the way we sense the sensations we feel also frame our brain. So it's not just metaphors that frame our thinking, but also, for example, sensations of weight, of roughness, for example. People who experience weight, for example, tend to make more ethical decisions. The reasoning being, when you experience weight, you associate weight with burden, with guilt, and you tend to react accordingly. Now, if you're sitting in a comfy chair, if you are, just picking up very light pieces of paper and using a computer, you never really get the opportunity to experience weight. Is this affecting management decisions? Now, the literature suggests it may be, and there's more research needed in that area. So what we've tried to do, for example, is incorporate weight, roughness, color, for example, into our model in order to elicit these metaphors that we think will help managers make better decisions. For example, we have these resource tokens. Now, these resource tokens aren't pieces of paper. They're not digital. They're made of brass. They're pretty heavy. So when a manager picks one of these up and moves it to somewhere else on the board, they're making assumptions about this as being important, as being a scarce resource, as being valuable because of its weight. Okay? And that doesn't need to be explained to them. It's kind of a natural human bias to assume that heavy is better or heavy is more valuable. So that's one of the reasons we think the Startup Jungle is going to help managers both subconsciously and consciously come up with better strategies and solutions.